Okay, so thank you so much for joining us, Gopinath, on our journey of voices. This is episode 18, so it's
All
been a
right.
little bit of an adjustment and a lot of growth, big learning
Mm.
curve. So we're super excited to have you, and very, very much so looking forward to hearing your story.
Happy to share. Looking forward to it myself. Don't know what the hell's gonna happen.
Well, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out.
We are.
All right, my man. So to start us off, I know Andrea's mentioned you guys connected in New York, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
And
I didn't spend as much time with him, I think, as much as I did with your mom.
okay.
And we had some wonderful conversations just about, I think the topic was peace, but we ended up talking about conscious living and how what we eat really affects our consciousness and a whole bunch of fascinating topics like that. And she had suggested I meet Andreas and connect with him around something like this. And I happened to get an email by him, and here we are a week and a half later.
Here we are today. And also, hopefully we can dive into those topics, man, because that is something that we talk about as well in terms of eating and consciousness and how they relate,
Absolutely.
how that affects our day-to-day. But first and foremost, we got to get back to the roots. So why don't you tell us and everybody where you're from and what it was like growing up there?
Okay. So I was born and raised in India, in a small village about 3 hours outside of Delhi. And the village's name is called Vrindavan. And it's actually a very spiritual space for certain practices within Hinduism. Now, Hinduism is a large blanket kind of name that covers a whole variety of spiritual and religious practices. But specifically, this one is the equivalent of where Jesus was born. Vrindavan is where Krishna was born. And so a lot of spiritual practitioners go there. And my parents in the late 80s moved there, wanting to explore and really dive into the heart of spirituality in that tradition. And so my mom's Irish, from a small town south of Ireland, and my dad's from Long Island, New York. And so these two people traveled to this tiny place. There's, electricity 3 hours a day. I grew up without wearing shoes for most of my life. Just this, wild child running around the place, monkeys everywhere, dogs everywhere. I got along with them more than I got along with my classmates, and I was constantly getting in trouble. But so that's where it all started. And I went to a spiritual boarding school there.
Okay.
For 12 years, actually. I joined when I was 5 years old. And we'd get up in the morning at about 3:30, 4 o'clock and do morning meditation and spiritual practices. Then we do some academics during the day. Although when we were younger, it was more just like, let's pretend we're talking about sand and go to the river and go swim in, and just like really had a very open, kind of very free childhood. At one point, this is really cool. They each gave us a calf to take care of. And I think I was like 6 years old, and we'd go every 2 days and like go and make sure that everything was okay. The cow is very spiritual in that tradition. So it was a lot of fun. And did that through high school. Basically, I mean, I know I'm jumping over a large amount over there, but a lot of self-reflection time and trying to put those practices in based on a philosophy of mindfulness and conscious action. I was by far the biggest troublemaker in school and didn't like to comply with anything and like to challenge everything. So the teachers of the spiritual tradition were a little less happy with my approaches than maybe others that were more willing to go along with it without putting up a fight. But yeah, it was great fun and an incredible childhood.
Okay. So my question is for you. That is something like I've never experienced growing up, right? And even at this point, you have to search to find those kind of environments, anything kind of even like that, right? You're in India, right? And there's a big focus on spirituality, not only in your environment, but in your household, as well.
Absolutely.
So how did that impact you, your parents' focus on spirituality, and how did that help you kind of grow?
Wow. Had an incredible impact. I mean, I look up to both of my parents very much on this. And I've been reflecting a lot recently, actually, on how one's parents and one's surrounding when growing up really impacts the way I think about life and the journey. And my parents had nothing when they moved to India. They had about $200, I think.
Mm.
And they'd travel back in the summer, make some money, and then fly over to India and just try to do work and do service and be in the service of others and one's own self kind of understanding and reflection. And so as so I'm in a relationship, and the way I deal with money is very different than the way my significant other deals with money. She's a little more conscious of it. She grew up in England and grew up in a family that works and that never had that same experience. So I'm just recognizing my biases towards certain things and a certain level of trust in certain spaces and areas that others may not have. And I don't necessarily claim that it's better, but I think that it's just unique, and it's something that is fun to play around with. But it was I definitely have a lot of trust in something that's much bigger than me, in a spirit, in a God, in an energy, and it's. I've reflecting back when Andrea sent me some of the questions, it was really cool to be thinking about that for a few days. And the one thing I realized was that all the important, wonderful things that have happened in my life haven't been because I've intentionally gone out and sought them. They've all kind of just wonderfully happened. And I'm trying to hold that with this kind of promise of the pursuit of happiness in American culture that I've come across that says, hey, if you do this, you'll do this, and you'll be happy, and you'll be happy, and you'll be happy. And I'm sitting here thinking, everything that's happened that I've been really happy about hasn't happened because I've pursued it in any way. It just has come to be. And everything sad that's happened, similarly, I'm not seeking it out, but I find myself being unhappy when I've sought something out and not been able to get it. And if I actually believe that that's within my control, then I will be unhappy. But if I start to let go of that, which I've been trying to practice, there's more room to allow others to emerge in other space and other energy. So it's been something I played around with, but it started a long time ago in my childhood.
Okay. You know what I really like about you, and you said it from the jump, is that you question things. So, and how this is all working out in my mind is that it's all interconnected, right? The spirituality that you grew up around, and how the more freedom kind of allowed you to challenge things, right? And also coming over to North America, there's that culture of achieving the American dream, right? Mm-hmm. And there can be a lot of detrimental impacts to one's mental health and one's quality of life, because if you're not achieving at the same level that everyone else is, or at the same level that you're being told, that the message pushed at you each and every day, you can sink into a pretty low place. Absolutely. Right? So did you feel that kind of molded you a little bit, that culture? How did you maintain that mindset coming from India to North America, and kind of trusting that bigger force at play in your life, opposed to, acclimatizing to the gotta achieve, gotta climb the ladder?
If I'm being honest, I didn't. And that was a huge part of my journey. So I grew up also, and I don't say this in a mean way, but I grew up in a post-colonial India, 40 years after the British left, and I have super pale skin. I don't tan, I just go white, red, white. And so I grew up as a minority in a place that really struggled with a lot of the pain that the British had imposed onto them. And there was generations of that. And so a lot of that was projected onto me. And there was some distancing. There's a definite inherent lack of trust and certain pieces like that, to the point where I would often get frustrated with the way I look because of the distancing and what it caused for me.
All of it. I know Dre wants to jump in.
I'm just waiting for this guy to finish.
Yeah. Just last question. I mean, please, not the last question, but so during that huge transition for you, spirituality seems like it was a stronghold, right? Yeah. Was there anything else that you could, when things got confusing, when, even when, if you were holding any pain, that you hadn't really let go of, aside from spirituality, although it is connected with many other things, is there anything that you could rely on, in terms of mantra or any other strongholds for you to help you develop that deeper identity?
honestly more important than spirituality was the people and the conversations I had and the connections I made with friends. That to me has been more transformative. I think my spirituality and my own commitment to myself can be fickle, and if I feel like it some days, it's a lot better than others, and it's all a constant up and down. But I've always gained so much from having true and honest friendships, where I can talk about things that may or may not be spiritual, that may just be something I'm struggling with, whether it's identity, whether it's finances, whether it's something that's just, it's not on a high philosophical feel better space, but it's a real, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. And I've been very lucky to have met some incredible people and to still have them as friends. And those friendships have been the most transformative thing in my life by far. And I think one of the questions is what do you wish others have? And it's to just truly have people that you can be open with and be curious with about the world, and that will appreciate the struggle, and that you're not supposed to be someone who's perfect, but the fact that you are vulnerable and open is what makes you friends.
Very deeply. And this is my brother. This is my older brother right here.
Awesome.
And I think honestly, I'm just curious because like you're hitting on so many points that resonate with both of us, and I think with a larger audience as well, because whether it's a major and an obvious transition, going from one very distinct culture in India and going to almost maybe the opposite end of the spectrum in the States, right? Very, not just in North America, because, Canada and the US have a very different dynamic as well. But making that adjustment, I'm very curious, because you're speaking about being open and honest and the vulnerability and listening. But how did you go about finding the right people or being found by the right people in terms of friendships, right? Because it is very challenging at a time, when there's so much noise, socially, culturally, kind of the whole thing, right? Exactly what you're talking about. You spent some time finding yourself, going inside and kind of exploring the landscape there at University of Texas, right? So what was that process like? Because I'm sure you came across a lot of people that were not authentic, and even in the space of, maybe they were interested in talking and hanging out with you, but maybe you weren't able to get to that grounded level of conversation or relationship. So I'm curious what that looked like for you.
Oh man. Yeah, I think you're right on. It wasn't easy to find. And I think our society, at least on this part of the planet, does a poor job of connecting people authentically, and having space for that. Most of the social spaces that you go to, if it's a coffee shop or anything, people are still sitting behind this thin piece of pixels, dealing with the rest of the world outside of the coffee shop or anyone in front of them. I don't know how to answer how I found that. I think I distanced from whether they were the right people to hang out with instead of the wrong, because I don't think anyone is inherently right or wrong. I think there's just easier groups for me to relate to, or people at times in my life, and those have swung all over the place, which has been wonderful. But I feel very lucky to have met some of the people that I have, and for them to have taken the time to get to know me also. I think what I've done on my part is the one skill that has transformed my world has been learning to listen. Everything changed when it was less about me and just more about the other person. And I think that's the key.
No, just, you were talking about being fortunate to find those people, and how that was a big shift for you once you went from taking it as a self-centered thing to just being open and listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we forget that very often. At least I find myself still forgetting it at times, where if I'm in a relationship with someone and I feel like, why are they acting like that towards me? It's like, if I take out the for me part, and it's just like, why are they acting like that? That opens up a much different conversation. And especially if I don't go in guns blazing. And it's a practice. Sometimes I fail. Friendships are so vital, and they aren't talked about enough. And I can say that because I think I'm fortunate to have them, but I've also felt very lonely at times in life, and that the beauty of having people to connect with on that level is very transformative.
Agreed. So, my man, I got a question for you.
Sure.
What are you passionate about?
Helping people be better, and helping us be more conscious about the world. I mean, I think what really inspired me about when I got a chance to look at your Facebook page and some of the interviews that you guys have done is what you guys are doing is really talking and bringing consciousness to the world on certain topics that really need it. And so my passion is really people and working with them. And I struggled with that because my first degree and what I can do pretty decently is do a bunch of graphic design work, but it's just sitting behind a screen all day, which is why I went and got a master's degree in something else that was not screen based. So I got a master's in what they call organization development, which I'm still trying to figure out how to describe it. But one of my professors just said it's helping people learn how to work and play with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something, at its core, some of the coaching that I've done with individuals and it's just helping communities, organizations, teams work better with each other and actually have some of the conversations they might not have had.
Love that, man. You're gaining some momentum. I like that.
Trying to do something. Yeah.
I like that.
And honestly, really, in everything you're talking about, I know with the organizational development, and you touched on that a little bit. And I know bringing it all the way back to when we first met in New York with open space. And so I'm curious, and I'll probably ask some more about it soon, but in terms of taking that, as a platform, because, obviously with kind of the main guiding principle is everything is self-organizing. And that's what you were speaking to earlier as well, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of there's no right or wrong people. Maybe it's just kind of who's in alignment with where you are in your journey now, or in the most alignment and that kind of thing. So I'm curious, what has open space provided you in terms of a perspective for when and you're talking about integrating the Hindi into that, and whether that's going back home, but you do have a very unique mix of the tech as well as the personal. And now I'm just curious as to see, what are some of the visions that you see open space kind of integrating, for yourself personally or professionally?
What open space has given me is a really wonderful approach to allowing community to form and community to be. And this is something that I've shifted on actually over the last few years. I started when I moved to the States, and when I started working, I had a much more, I guess I call it like an empire-based mindset, which is kind of structure, hierarchy, like, let me just get the task done. I was really not, if someone wasn't doing their job, it would frustrate me. And this was only, it's crazy to say, it was only like 5 years ago, to where I think I've swung the other way now. And through my journey, my learnings, my conversations with people, I've realized that it's much more beautiful for people to really invest and give what they can to any which space, and that we can work together to create a collective future, and that it's less about the task and more about the people doing the task and how they're connecting. So yeah, it's been letting my ego know it's okay that I was wrong, for it to now be more in aligned with what I'd like to see happen, and to actually acknowledge that there are certain principles that work better for our human race per se, and our overall consciousn's than others. And the principle of right or wrong and hierarchy and structure can limit the creativity and the brilliance that people really have. And I just see so many people sitting in traffic, just hating their lives, just punching the dashboard. So, waiting to get home. And I think, what if we could have a society that was really living into whatever gift they have and whatever preferences they have to really give that back, I think that would just be a completely transformative and wonderful space.
Absolutely. And you just painted a picture for me. So you say you see a lot of people, you know, and just punching their dashboard, you know, kind of hating life. With the spirituality more pronounced in India, how have you realized the difference in behaviors for, you know, people of North America opposed to people in India? I mean, you know what I'm trying to get at kind of maybe like the handling emotions spiraling out of control, certain issues in both places. You know, how do you see that difference? How do you see that differentiating because of spirituality?
I've found that spiritual practitioners that are truly investing energy, time, and focus into that authentically in both cultures are very similar. I've found both cultures to be widely chaotic also. India in its own magnificent, wow, the state I grew up in, India has 27 states, I think. I better get that one right. I grew up in one state that if it was its own country would be the 5th largest country in the world. So they have a huge, and it's definitely smaller than Texas. And there's a lot of people in a very small amount of space. And so they have a very unique culture. And so this has been fascinating me recently. I'm reading this book on cultures, and the question it's a question of morality or principles and how we live into them differently, even though we claim that we're standing for the same thing. And it's highlighting to me what we often see as right or wrong are just different ways of living into the same principle that we both think we're right. But instead of taking the time to understand, we take the time to blame and distance.
All right. And then to dive back into your journey a little bit, can you tell us about the biggest setback that you faced and how you overcame that?
See, at its core, I'm an Indian guy. I love Bollywood music. I can dance to it. I don't look it though, right? So someone who I'm engaging with or talking to will likely engage with me in a different way than they would with someone. And I don't inherently blame them for that, because I think it's a matter of respect. If I do meet someone from India, I do try to culturally show them respect in the ways that I would, as much as I engage with someone differently from a different culture. But there's also a lot of projections and a lot of pain that people with white skin have caused to others. And what I learned from Anastasia, which has been an incredible challenge, is to acknowledge that there are things that people who look like me or who are, even whether it's males, heterosexuals, there's a lot of privilege that my image has been given, even though I don't want it, or I never wanted it. And privilege caused pain to me when I wasn't in that position. So I recognize that. And what she gave me was the opportunity to say, you can be a screen that people can project onto, and then you can react in a way that no one's ever reacted to that person. As someone who is white, that can be very healing and transformative if you choose to do that. You can also choose to distance and not engage, but know that you have this opportunity, and it's not out of pity, it's not out of anything, or they don't need it per se, but you can really be helpful if there are opportunities that you see where this might happen.
Respect.
Again, like everything you're saying is honestly, it's very powerful, because I think like you're speaking to so many points. And I think, even where you were talking about the fact that, you had a choice, as is everyone, when you're put in a role or in a certain narrative situation, your choice is, do you distance or do you embrace? Right? And regardless of the level of discomfort you feel at that moment, what is your choice? And I think like that's so very powerful because it can be very transformative, right? And I think, I don't want to say, limit it and just say North America, but I think kind of our grander culture or the societal perspectives that we take is that something that is uncomfortable is not something that you want to do. It's not good for you. It's not the right thing to do. Again, bringing that word in. And so it's very interesting to hear that, that's where the transformation happens, and has happened for you, is when you step into that discomfort and you honor that, just like with what you're saying. I don't know, I'm not the best, but you're staying curious and you're staying grounded from a place of authenticity. And for me, that's the key, regardless of being white or black or brown or beige. Is that you have to honor that vulnerability so that other people can feel it. Mm-hmm. And I think regardless of what narrative you've been slotted into, just kind of being aware of, like you said, the privilege. In whatever context. If you're heterosexual, that's a privilege in our culture. If you're a man, that's a privilege. And then all the other layers on top of that. And so I'm just curious, because you're speaking to, again, so many things. What message, if you had to, I guess, refine it into a way, but what message would you have to a younger Gopinath?
To be less black and white, I think, would be really helpful. And it's so hard. I always struggle with these questions because it's you can't get to where you are without going through the journey, and the journey is meant to happen uniquely for you. You cannot live someone else's journey, which is why I struggle with these kind of things, because I don't know if something happened. If something were to happen differently, great. I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be somewhere else, and that's okay also. But I guess my message would just be to, what it would be, honestly, to get out from behind a screen as much as possible. And that's a message to me right now too. Also, I watch way too much YouTube, and just the world is so incredibly beautiful and fascinating, and people are so deeply complex and wonderful, that my message would be to spend more time in the world, and not a world that is 2 inches and like, there's days where I just sit in front of a screen and I'm working or doing that, but I feel like there's so much more. So I wish I had done that more, honestly. I think that would be my message to a younger self. I think I was lucky growing up in India, where there wasn't a lot of technology. I didn't have my first phone until I was 18 or something. There was some, but it's something that I think it's happened so fast that us as our norms around it haven't had time to form where they're healthy. And it's something I'm realizing right now that I find really important, that I want to do more of in my own life also.
Message is going to hit home with a lot of people. Before we have to go.
That'll be the thumbs down sign. How ironic that they'll be watching this on a screen, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's beauty to it. I acknowledge that. There's important things. I mean, this is just such a wonderful format to meet you all and have this conversation. But yeah, there's also times where I know, like, I'll look up after like 3 hours of Netflix and be like, well, what the hell? Is it really important that I watch that? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. But it's a way to connect, right? It's a way to connect, but can't get drawn in too much. Exactly. Right? So as I said, before we let you go, what are the next steps for you?
Oh, man. So I have this incredible spiritual teacher who's about 60, late 60s. And I've been having some wonderful conversations with him just about life. And it's such a gift to have someone who is so open to conversations and providing wisdom to someone who's like me, who just wants to question everything. I mean, even though I've experienced it, I still question it again.
Yeah.
And yeah, in certain communities, questioning is not received the same way as in others. And so for me, I want to continue my own spiritual journey and understanding um, through my relationship with him, and exploring that. And I recommend that to anyone if they do get a chance to have conversations with people that have been on this earth for longer than us. It's really powerful to hear what life was like before our screens, or what, and I think I can only seek it out now because I feel like I don't know as much. If you were to ask me when I was 18 to talk to them, an old person, what the hell am I going to learn from them? Would be my response. So, and yeah, just exploring, work and opportunities with that, and work and service are words I like to interchange, and what that looks like. And hopefully I'm going to propose and get engaged to my girlfriend soon. Yeah, it's its own journey. And she's taught me so much, and has been a really wonderful friend, in a way. She's the first relationship of my life, and in that way, and it's been wonderful. So yeah, you want to hear an ironic thing just to end it all?
Yeah, let me hear it.
She is a brown Indian woman who grew up as a third generation in the UK. So I'm more Indian culturally than she is, like way more. I speak the language, she doesn't speak the language. She has like this posh British, approach to life, which is wonderful, but it's so ironic because I grew up in India with these people that hated the British, and then here's this wonderful person who is British. It just causes all kind of chaos.
Yay, wow.
Yeah, so that's a curveball to throw it all off at the end.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, and so unique to have that opportunity to share life with someone and share just, yeah, it's been the latest journey and the latest adventure. So all of that's coming up soon.
Love that.
I'm very excited. Thank you so much for giving us the time and joining us on that journey.
Thank you all. And if there's anything I can do for you guys, or the work and the programs that you all do, I would actually really love to be a part of it. It's just inspiring to connect with people that have similar visions and similar kind of approaches. So please do let me know, or if anyone who is listening, watching, whatever, if there are some conversations or curiosities, I'm more than happy to connect. It is something I really love to do. So I just wanted to share that as the closing piece.
Please. Well, I'm grateful for it, and you also better be careful because we're gonna follow up on that one. We're gonna
done. Looking forward to it.
And honestly, that's really what this platform is. It's providing the people that are very much so aligned with helping other people grow and see themselves for who they are, so that they can give back, their gifts to the greater world, to raise that collective like you're talking about. And so again, very grateful for you joining us. Before we get you out of here, it's time for your official sign off.
मेरा नाम गोपीनाथ ब्लॉक है और ये मेरा आवाज है.